taking the best elements from Lucasfilm Limited Star Wars movie. Do you have what it takes to take on the Empire? Find out with Super Star Wars, available now.
Hello everyone, I'm Tyler, and welcome to another episode of Player One Start. So today we're going to talk about the Super Star Wars Trilogy on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. For those of you new to my channel or new to this series, this video is actually part of a series I'm doing on Star Wars games. In my previous videos, we talked about Star Wars for the Atari, Nintendo, and even a Famicom version that didn't make it over here to the United States. So it's up to you guys. If you want to watch those now, you can go ahead and click the link that's popping up in the corner, or you can wait till the video's over and you can watch them in whatever order you want. Following the completion of The Empire Strikes Back for the Nintendo Entertainment System, developers were occupied with making Super Star Wars for the Super Nintendo, so a corresponding NES sequel covering The Return of the Jedi was never developed or released. During development, artist John Knowles did the visual designs for the characters while Harrison Fong drew the backgrounds. Fong stated later that he did very little concept drawing before rendering the characters on the computer because, quote, everybody knew what the Star Wars characters looked like. Originally, the game design was planned to give the characters a dark black outline around their bodies. However, this idea was abandoned as it was thought to make the characters look too cartoonish looking. To make the gameplay a bit more interesting, a boss character was added to the end of each level. For example, the Kelhar boss monster is based off of one of the chess pieces that R2-D2 plays with on the Millennium Falcon in the film. There was also a trash compactor level that was deleted from the game due to lack of cartridge space. The only known evidence of this level today that exists is an image that was published in an issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly around the time of the game's release. Super Star Wars was very well received when it was released on November 1st of 1992, with many game critics especially praising the detailed graphics on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and Super Star Wars was awarded the Best Action-Adventure Game of 1992 by Electronic Gaming Monthly, as well as the Best Movie-to-Game Port. I am very fond of these games, as I did play them a lot during my childhood, around the time I started becoming interested in the Star Wars franchise. And to put you in the mindset a little bit better, back then, there were only 3 Star Wars movies, and when I first played these games, there was never any indication that there would be another Star Wars movie made in my lifetime. And just so you know, these were the first Star Wars games I ever remember playing as a kid. And although I only owned one of these games, I often rented these from the local movie store in town. So let's go ahead and take a look at the gameplay. Though by today's standards this scene looks very primitive, this blew my mind back in the early 1990s. From the sampled soundtrack only the Super Nintendo sound chip could provide, to the scrolling text utilizing the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 scaling background layer, these were graphics and sound that I had never seen before. At the time, it was the closest I had seen to a video game being able to almost realistically come close to the movie version, or at least as much as it was technologically possible at the time. Watching this scene today does fill me with a lot of nostalgia, but it does show that some of these graphics have not aged very well, at least on the scrolling text background. However, the rest of the game I think looks a lot better. I think it was a nice touch that they added on the opening moments from the first scene of the movie, in which R2-D2 and C-3PO escape to the planet's surface in one of the escape pods. After that, you are immediately thrown into the action as Luke Skywalker as you traverse the sand dunes of Tatooine with nothing but your trusty blaster. And immediately you're almost overwhelmed by enemies. I have to say that I didn't really realize at the time when I first played this game that a lot of these creatures were original concepts that were not featured in the movie. Mainly because during this game you don't have a lot of time to think. It is shoot, fire, and kill everything in your path. This game is notoriously difficult for a reason, and it's very quickly apparent as to why when you're playing the first level. Overall, this first level does prepare you for what the gameplay is going to be like through most of this game. After you go through defeating a whole bunch of enemies, you reach the end of the stage in which you usually battle against a minor character from the actual movies. In this case, I'm battling up against the Sarlacc monster from the Jabba the Hutt scene in Return of the Jedi. Overall, this boss battle can be difficult, but once you get the pattern down, you can usually make quick work of him. And don't worry, the amount of times you're going to have to replay this level because you'll run out of lives and continues, it basically forces you to get better at defeating this enemy. But once you do defeat the Sarlacc monster, it is on to another cutscene, in which they do a little bit of rewriting of the movie, where Luke Skywalker comes across C-3PO who is missing R2-D2. And they just forego the part where Luke's uncle purchases them and then R2 escapes. Then you take control of Luke in his land speeder as they go and search for R2. And this level is one of the highly praised Mode 7 levels in which you're able to traverse the landscape in a pseudo 3D environment provided by the Mode 7 scaling. In this level, you're able to use a blaster that is somehow attached to the land speeder to target Jawas, and once you get the select number of targets, you head towards the sandcrawler, and then this level ends. And here's a level I have frequently died at, and I'm still not very good at to this day. Your first objective is to climb the outside of the sandcrawler, which is filled with a whole bunch of very difficult and precise platforming jumps, all the while you are trying to defeat some of the enemies that are around, as well as I assume they're the defenses of the sandcrawler, because otherwise why would they have just open flame pits on the side? And if at any point you make a mistake, you fall almost all the way back to the bottom every time, and you have to reascend to where you were at before. Oh, and whenever you move far enough away from some of the obstacles you've defeated, they actually reappear. After several tries, I was actually able to make it to the top and get inside the sandcrawler. But don't be celebrating too much yet, because the inside of the sandcrawler is going to be more of the same story. Inside of the sandcrawler, which can be pretty much described as murder hallways, there are several Jawas, fully automatic robotic weapons, doors, traps, and there have been times where I've forgotten to pause the game for a second, and I died as a result because you can't stay still because something's going to kill you. Again, I feel the level of difficulty here is a bit on the extreme side, and keep in mind, I chose the easiest setting possible before entering into this level. Unfortunately, this is where my quest without cheats ended because I couldn't make it through all this level. And here's the screen that I think I see the most often in this game, and that is the game over screen. Luckily you're given some continues, but once those are out, you have to start all the way back at the beginning of the game. However, if you enter debug mode, there is actually a key combination you can press on your controller that will automatically let you advance to the next level. So I'm going to go ahead and use that so I can show you a bit more of the game. And the next level is another exterior level, well this time you're fighting against the Sand People instead of Jawas. As a result of the debug mode, I also have the lightsaber a bit early, and I could choose to play whichever character I want in each level. So I can choose between Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, or Chewbacca. This level is kind of a mixture of the maze of the Jawa sandcrawler and the exterior of the level of Tatooine. Again, you just run and gun, and at the end you will meet Obi-Wan Kenobi. Next, you will fight your way through the Sand People's banthas until you reach your land speeder, but not before facing off against a giant womp rat. And you can use your land speeder to reach Mos Eisley Cantina. Mos Eisley Cantina offers a bit of a different gameplay element where you're actually playing in the style of Double Dragon here. It even has arrows flash when you're ready to proceed to the next part of the screen. After you meet up with Han Solo and Chewie in the Mos Eisley Cantina, then you are able to fight your way to the Millennium Falcon at Docking Bay 94. You are then treated to a cutscene where you blast your way out of Mos Eisley and get immediately trapped by the Death Star's tractor beam. In the first Death Star level, you have to avoid getting hit by TIE fighters as you fight your way to the jail cell where Princess Leia is being kept. Going through the holding cell area, avoiding some of the robots, and crushing platforms that I don't remember seeing in the movie, you'll eventually meet up with Princess Leia. Next, you take an elevator death ride so you can get back to the Millennium Falcon just in time to see Obi-Wan taken down by Darth Vader. Then you're treated to a cutscene where you escape the Death Star and fly all the way to the Yavin base. And then it's time for the battle to begin. And I have to tell you, this again was another visually impressive level that I saw as a kid. Granted, I always had to use cheat codes to get here, but once I got here, this was probably the level I played the most often. It was clear to me how much they were pushing the limits of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System to be able to deliver the dogfights of the X-Wings versus the TIE Fighters outside of the Death Star. And it got even better once you were able to make the trench run. Keep in mind that the best graphics we saw for this fight before was the Atari Vector Graphics arcade version that came out over a decade earlier. And after that, you are treated to the ending cutscene that gives away the ending of the movie, and you are treated to a credit sequence, for some reason, watermarked by Darth Vader. Overall, I do enjoy this game, although it hasn't really gotten any easier since the earliest time that I've played it. Alright, so what are my thoughts on the Super Star Wars Trilogy on the Super Nintendo? First, the graphics. I have to say that when I first played these on the Super Nintendo, the graphics did stick out to me as some of the best graphics I had yet to see on the Super Nintendo. The opening title screen and the side-scrolling levels still look great to this day. However, the Mode 7 scaling, although looking dated today, was actually still something that looked mind-blowing back in the day. I remember as a kid trying to squint and move my head around the screen in any way possible to be able to read the text as it went across the screen. Seeing this now reminds me more of an eye exam than it does seeing the opening text crawl. However, the use of Mode 7 in the levels I think still holds up well today. The Sandspeeder level is still fun and enjoyable, the Death Star battle is kind of a nightmare, and the trench run still looks mind-blowing to me that it is coming off of the Super Nintendo. I also enjoyed the cutscenes that stayed faithful to the movie in between each level. So all of these were released before Donkey Kong Country. I kind of define that game and Star Fox as two games that really defined what the maximum capability of the Super Nintendo was going to be. So before that time, the only way we got a 3D perspective in games was through Mode 7. And I have to admit, the Mode 7 levels in this game did blow my mind as a kid. But today, I find them still fun to play, but I do see that they haven't aged well, at least not as well as the rest of the game. But that aside, I do feel that the graphics on these games are very good, and they did do some tweaks and improvements to make them just a little bit better with each release. The sound is where I think this game also really shines well. I do enjoy the soundtrack of these games. Although today, some people may find it as a primitive representation of what the soundtrack would be. Listen to the Star Wars theme on the Nintendo Entertainment System versus on the Super Nintendo. I mean, wow, there is no comparison. The Super Nintendo did an excellent job and was very well suited for reproducing the score on a cartridge, at least the best that it could be. Moving on to the gameplay. Part of the reason why I enjoy these games so much is due to my extreme fondness with the Star Wars Trilogy. And that is perhaps why I do like going back and playing these games. I will admit, I don't play them as often as I do other games, mainly because of the difficulty. And wow, does this game dish it to you hard the entire game. I remember as a kid, without cheat codes, I could only get past maybe the first level, and I would go through all of my continues within the first level, the second level, and maybe even the third. Also, add to the fact that I used to rent these a lot as a kid, that's about as far as I could get before I'd have to return it back to the video store. So, finding cheat codes for this game was what made me able to beat them in the first place when I was a kid. Yes, as an adult, I did go back and beat these games without cheat codes, and oh my gosh, was that a monumental task. It is very rewarding when you're finally able to beat it, but I think that's part of the reason why today's Star Wars games are a bit easier. For example, today, the Lego Star Wars games have no life counter. You can die as many times as you want and keep going. I think that if they added something like that to this game, it would have taken away from the gameplay just a little bit. Other than that, the controls for the most part are tight and responsive, and there's no really faults that I can say that stuck out to me. But overall, as a complete package, if you're a Star Wars fan, it is definitely a necessity for you to collect for your Super Nintendo collection. But anyway, that's just my opinion. What do you guys think of these games? Do you think they're worth playing today? Are there any levels in particular that you guys found incredibly frustrating? Go ahead and leave a comment below and let me know what you guys think. I'd really like to hear you guys' thoughts on it. Well, that's actually going to wrap it up for this video. Remember, if you like what you see, please hit that like and subscribe button, share with a friend. Again, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned because I have more content coming. I'll see you guys next time. If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Also, if you enjoy the content of this channel, please remember to click on this subscribe button. Again, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you'd like to see some of the content I've already done, feel free to click on some of the suggestions that are popping up on your screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.